The morning sun cut across the Coronado rifle range like a blade turning the sand to gold and the shadows to ink. At the 1,000-yard line, a figure stood motionless, small, focused, dangerous. Alessandra Blackwood was a paradox in human form. 5'3", barely breaking 120 soaking wet, she looked more like someone's kid sister than a Navy SEAL. But the men who'd made that mistake had learned better, usually the hard way. Her auburn hair was pulled back tight in a regulation bun, revealing a face all sharp angles and harder resolve. Green eyes that could calculate windage and elevation in a heartbeat. Hands steady as stone. 27 years old and already a ghost story in the teams. She stood at the firing line with something that didn't belong in the 21st century, a crossbow. Not just any crossbow. The Raven R500E was a masterpiece of modern engineering wrapped in medieval delivery. Carbon fiber limbs, reverse draw cam system, 500 feet per second of silent death. In Alessandra's hands, it was art. But that wasn't what made it special. She reached into the tactical case at her feet and withdrew a bolt. Standard carbon shaft field point tip. Except this tip held something extra. A microcharge of C4 explosive the size of a pencil eraser wrapped in a custom impact fuse of her own design. 300 hours of engineering testing failing rebuilding. The result, a weapon that could kill at 1,000 yards with less sound than a whisper. 68 decibels, quieter than a normal conversation. Alessandra loaded the bolt, feeling the familiar resistance as the string locked into place with 500 pounds of tension. The scope, a Night Force Adakiar with ballistic reticle, showed her target, a human-sized silhouette at 1,200 yards, 3/4 of a mile away. The wind was picking up, 4 miles per hour from the southwest, gusting to 6. Temperature climbing towards 72 degrees. Humidity at 18%. She did the math in her head. Holdover compensation, wind drift, Coriolis effect. Her father had taught her to shoot. Her grandfather had taught her to calculate. The SEAL instructors had taught her to kill. She was excellent at all three. Breath in, hold, heart rate dropping. 74 beats per minute. 68. 59. Between heartbeats, she squeezed the trigger. The crossbow barely whispered. The bolt arced through the morning air like a prayer seeking God. 3.2 seconds of flight time. Then impact. The explosion was muffled internal. The target's chest cavity erupted from the inside, the C4 doing its work with brutal efficiency. At this distance, the sound reached her ears as nothing more than a soft thump. Perfect. Well, I'll be damned. Alessandra didn't turn. She'd heard the approach. Boots on sand, the slight hitch in the left step. The breathing of a man who'd smoked too many cigarettes and too many wars. She'd known someone was watching for the past 10 minutes. She just hadn't cared. Most people knock, she said, loading another bolt. Most people don't bring toys to a gunfight. Now she turned. Garrett Thorne stood 20 feet away, arms crossed, face carved from weathered granite. 68 years old, and he looked every day of it in the best possible way. 6'1", still carrying 190 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. Gray-white hair cut high and tight. Blue eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine and done things most people wouldn't believe. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, boots, a faded flannel shirt, but everything about him screamed military. The posture, the awareness, the way his gaze swept the range cataloging threats out of pure habit. Garrett Ironside Thorne, SEAL Team 2, retired. Gulf War legend. 89 confirmed kills in Desert Storm. Most of them at ranges beyond 1,000 yards with an M40A3 bolt-action rifle and iron will. If you asked anyone in a naval special warfare who the greatest sniper in SEAL history was, half would say Chris Kyle. The other half would say Garrett Thorne. And the people who actually knew would say Garrett every time. "It's not a toy," Alessandra said, turning back to the range. "It's a tool. It's a goddamn relic from the Renaissance. So are you. Yet here you stand." For a moment, the silence stretched between them like a challenge. Then Garrett laughed, a short, sharp bark that held more respect than insult. "They told me you had a mouth on you." "They tell me lots of things." Alessandra chambered the bolt sighted downrange. "Usually after they've underestimated me." "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "Isn't it?" Another target, 1,200 yards. This one on a remote-controlled sled moving lateral at 2 miles per hour. She adjusted her aim point, calculating lead time wind drift, the target's acceleration curve. "I think," Garrett said slowly, "that I'm watching someone play with fireworks when they should be training with real weapons." Alessandra fired. The bolt flew true, arcing through space, leading the target by 8 inches. Impact. Explosion. The silhouette folded like origami, the sled grinding to a halt. She lowered the crossbow and turned to face him fully. "Real enough for you, Ironside?" Something flickered across Garrett's face. Not quite surprise. Not quite approval. Something in between the look of a man recalculating an assessment he'd already made. "Acceptable," he said finally. "Under combat stress, we'll see if you hold up." "Combat stress?" Alessandra's smile was cold. "Is that what they're calling you these days? A consultant on tactical stress?" "They're calling me a lot of things." Garrett stepped closer, his gaze moving from the crossbow to her face. "Most of them involve the word old. Age is just a number," said every young person who hasn't earned their scars yet. "I've got scars." The words came out harder than she intended. "You just can't see them." For 3 heartbeats, they stared at each other. 2 generations of warriors, separated by 4 decades, and joined by the same bloody purpose. Garrett broke first. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, held it out. "Mission brief. We deploy in 6 hours." Alessandra took it, scanning the details. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted, tightened. "Senator's daughter," she said, "and 2 Secret Service agents, kidnapped 4 days ago. Compound near the border 85 miles south of Tucson." Garrett's voice was flat professional. 14 to 16 hostiles. Cartel affiliated, led by someone who calls himself El Cazador. The Hunter. "Yeah." Something dark crossed Garrett's face. "I know him." Alessandra looked up sharply. "Know him how?" "Trained him. 1991. Joint Operations Prep for Desert Storm. His real name's Mateo Vega. Mexican Special Forces back when we were all friends and allies." Garrett's jaw tightened. "Best student I ever had." The implications hung between them like gunsmoke. And now, he's kidnapping Americans. World changes. People change with it. Garrett met her eyes. Or they die trying to stay the same. Alessandra folded the brief, tucked it into her pocket. "What's the play?" "Zero noise insertion. The compound's less than 2 miles from a Border Patrol listening post. Anything loud brings backup theirs and ours. Situation gets complicated fast. So we go quiet. So you go quiet." Garrett's emphasis was deliberate. "They want you as primary sniper. That medieval weapon of yours is the only thing quiet enough to take out their sentries without alerting the whole damn cartel." Something cold settled in Alessandra's chest. Pride, maybe. Or the weight of expectation she'd been carrying since she was 10 years old and her grandfather had first put a crossbow in her hands. "How many sentries?" "Intel says 4 on rooftops rotating shift. But there's a relief team, another 4, coming up at 02:15. Garrett paused. "You'll have 90 seconds to take all 8 before their next radio check-in. Miss one, they alert. Alert means hostages die. 8 targets, 90 seconds. Alessandra did the math instantly. 11 seconds per target, including reload time. Statistically impossible for most operators. Good thing I'm not most operators. Garrett studied her for a long moment. You really think you can do this 8 targets 90 seconds with a weapon that belongs in a museum? Alessandra didn't smile, didn't flinch. She just held his gaze with the same iron certainty that had carried her through Bud S, through SEAL qualification training, through every man who'd ever told her she didn't belong. I don't think, she said. I know. Garrett studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once sharp. Good, because the team's counting on it, and I don't work with people who get my men killed. He walked away, that distinctive hitch in his left leg, marking each step a souvenir from Panama, 1989. Before Alessandra was even born. She watched him go, then turned back to the range. Loaded another bolt. 1,200 yards, moving target wind, gusting to 7 miles per hour. Between heartbeats, she fired. Perfect hit. The explosion echoed across the range like distant thunder, and somewhere behind her, she could have sworn she heard Garrett Thorne chuckle. The briefing room smelled like coffee gun oil and old anxiety. Alessandra arrived 15 minutes early, force of habit, and found she wasn't the first. Lieutenant Colton Morrison sat at the head of the table, studying satellite photos like they contained the secrets of the universe. 34 years old, 6 feet of solid confidence wrapped in desert camouflage. His call sign was Blade, earned during a classified op in Yemen, where he'd done things with a K-bar knife that became legend before they became classified. He looked up when she entered. Reaper. Blade. They'd worked together twice before. Once in Syria, once in Somalia. Both times he'd been professional competent and just skeptical enough about her abilities to be annoying. Not hostile, just careful. She could work with careful. Heard Ironside put you through your paces this morning, Colton said. Heard he's got opinions about medieval weapons. Garrett's got opinions about everything. Comes with being a legend. Colton gestured at the empty chairs. The others are inbound. We brief in 10. Alessandra took a seat, studying the photos spread across the table. Satellite imagery, drone footage, thermal scans. The compound was a sprawling ranch-style structure, abandoned by whoever built it, occupied by people who didn't care about property rights. 2 main buildings. Guard towers at each corner. Fencing that had seen better decades. And rooftops, perfect positions for sentries with sight lines for miles. The door opened. 2 men entered together, already mid-conversation. Telling you the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. You're delusional. Have you seen their offensive line? Petty Officer Wyatt Fletcher and Petty Officer Declan Sterling? 38 and 32 respectively. Fletcher was the team's breacher, 6'2", of controlled explosion and tactical demolition. His call sign, Hammer, was less creative and more descriptive. Declan was comms and tech thinner, quicker, with the kind of mind that could crack encryption while humming classic rock. His call sign, Ghost, came from his ability to disappear in plain sight. They both nodded to Alessandra as they took seats. Reaper, Wyatt said. Heard you made Ironside smile today. That true. I made him chuckle. Might be the same thing. With Garrett it is, Declan said, opening his laptop. Man hasn't actually smiled since the Clinton administration. The door opened again. Garrett Thorne entered, followed by a woman in a dark suit who radiated government authority like others radiated warmth. Late 40s, blonde hair pulled back severely, eyes that missed nothing. This is Special Agent Sarah Webb, Garrett said, taking a seat. FBI, she'll brief the situation. Sarah moved to the front of the room, connecting her laptop to the projector. Images filled the screen. A young woman with dark hair and her father's determined jaw flanked by 2 people in dark suits. Natalie Caldwell, Sarah began. 26 years old, daughter of Senator Bradford Caldwell, Armed Services Committee. 4 days ago, she was traveling to a border security briefing with two Secret Service agents, Wallace McKenna and Meredith Hartwell. They never arrived. The image changed. A grainy security camera photo showing three people being forced into a van at gunpoint. They were intercepted 12 miles from the checkpoint. Professional work. No shots fired, no witnesses, no evidence left behind. Sarah's voice was clinical detached. Ransom demand came 6 hours later, $20 million, and the release of 3 cartel lieutenants currently in federal custody. That's not happening, Colton said. No, Sarah agreed. It's not, which means we extract them the hard way. The screen shifted to satellite imagery of the compound. Alessandra leaned forward, studying details. The facility is an old ranch abandoned in the late 90s. Current occupants are associated with Los Fantasmas Ghost Cartel. Small operation, but well-funded and extremely violent. Sarah zoomed in on the main building. We estimate 14 to 16 fighters armed with AK pattern rifles, RPGs, and assorted small arms. Leadership? Garrett asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Goes by the name El Cazador. Real name, Mateo Vega. Former Mexican Special Forces trained by U.S. military in 1991, Garrett finished. I was there. The room went quiet. Sarah looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them. Yes, she said finally. You were, which is why you're here. Garrett said nothing, but Alessandra saw his hands tighten on the table, just a fraction, just for a moment. Intel suggests the hostages are being held in the main building, Sarah continued. Second floor northeast room. Guards rotate every 3 hours. Next rotation is at 02:15 hours, which gives us our window. Sentries, Colton asked. 4 confirmed rooftop positions initially, 2 on the main building, 2 on the north guard towers. Sarah pulled up thermal imagery. But at 02:15, a relief team of 4 additional sentries will rotate up. They maintain radio contact every 90 seconds. Miss a check-in after all 8 are in position, the whole compound goes alert, which is where Reaper comes in. Garrett said, looking at Alessandra. 8 sentries, 90 seconds, 0 noise tolerance. Every eye in the room turned to her. Alessandra kept her expression neutral. The crossbow's effective range is 1,200 yards. What's the engagement distance? Longest shot is 867 yards, Sarah said. North tower to your planned overwatch position. Wind conditions. Variable, 3 to 7 miles per hour southwestern flow. Temperature dropping through the night should be mid-50s by insertion time. Alessandra did the math silently. Hold over at that range factoring wind temperature, the weight of the explosive bolt versus a standard field point. Reload time at 3.2 seconds. 8 targets, 90 seconds. Brutal, but doable. I can make it work, she said. Wyatt leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. No offense, Reaper, but can you? That's not a lot of margin for error. There won't be any error. Confidence is good. Overconfidence gets people killed. So does hesitation. Alessandra met his eyes. I've done harder shots under worse conditions. This is well within parameters. Within parameters. Wyatt shook his head. Listen to yourself. You sound like a math problem, not an operator. Math problems have solutions. Operators use them to win. She turned to Colton. If I miss a shot, you abort. If I'm compromised, you extract without me. If I succeed, you breach and clear. Simple. Nothing's simple when senators' daughters are involved, Colton said. But he nodded. You're primary sniper. Ironside is your spotter and advisor. Garrett raised an eyebrow. Since when do I need to advise anyone? Since they made me team leader and you a consultant. Colton's tone was respectful, but firm. You've got the experience. She's got the weapon. You work together. For a moment, Alessandra thought Garrett might object, but he just nodded once. Fine. But if she misses, I'm taking the shot with a real rifle. If I miss, Alessandra said quietly, you won't have time. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Sarah cleared her throat. Insertion is by Heiho High Altitude High Opening. Jump from 25,000 feet land, 3 miles from the target. You'll ruck and set up overwatch, and wait for the sentry's 0215 check-in. That's your window. She looked at each of them in turn. Rules of engagement. Lethal force is authorized. Priority is hostage safety. Secondary priority is capturing El Cazador for intelligence purposes. And if El Cazador doesn't want to be captured, Declan asked. Sarah's expression didn't change. Then he doesn't leave that compound breathing. Garrett's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Wheels up at 1800 hours, Colton said, standing. Full kit, full load. We don't know what we're walking into, so we prepare for everything. He looked at Alessandra. That includes backup weapons. No matter how good your crossbow is, bring a rifle. Already planned on it. Good. He gathered the photos, slid them into a folder. Dismissed. Get your gear squared away. The room emptied quickly. Alessandra was halfway to the door when Garrett's voice stopped her. Blackwood. She turned. He was still seated studying one of the satellite photos. Yeah, that shot this morning. The moving target at 1,200 yards. He looked up, and his eyes were hard. Was that luck or skill? Alessandra considered lying, considered telling him what he wanted to hear. But something in his gaze demanded honesty. Skill, she said, with a margin for luck. Wind conditions were favorable, target movement was predictable, and I had time to calculate. In the field under stress, with lives on the line, she paused. I'll need to be better. Garrett studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Good answer. He stood, walked toward her. Up close, he was even more imposing, not because of his size, but because of the weight of experience he carried like a second skin. Your father was Daniel Blackwood, Master Chief SEAL Team 6. It wasn't a question. Alessandra felt something tighten in her chest. He was. I knew him. Not well, but I knew him. He died in Afghanistan 2006. Operation Enduring Freedom, classified mission that stayed classified. Garrett's voice was quiet. They told his family he died heroically. They were right. Alessandra swallowed hard. How do you know? Because I read the after-action report. And because men like your father don't die any other way. He paused. He would have been proud of you. What you've become. The words hit harder than any physical blow. Alessandra blinked, forced herself to meet his eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Prove it. Garrett moved past her toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. That crossbow of yours, the explosive bolts. Where'd you learn to make those? Taught myself. Engineering degree from Annapolis, 3 years of trial and error, and more failed prototypes than I want to count. Smart. Garrett nodded slowly. Dangerous, but smart. Your grandfather taught you to shoot crossbow. Harrison Blackwood, Colonel Army Rangers. He served in Grenada, Panama, retired after Desert Storm. Alessandra smiled slightly. He said crossbows were the thinking person's weapon. Silent, precise, and underestimated. Sounds like him. Garrett's expression softened just a fraction. I met Hawk a few times. Good man, hard man, but good. He opened the door, then glanced back. Tonight, when we're in position and you're lining up those shots, remember what he taught you. Trust your training. Trust your weapon. And for God's sake, trust yourself. He left before she could respond. Alessandra stood alone in the empty briefing room, staring at the satellite images on the screen. 8 rooftop positions. 90 seconds. 0 room for error. She thought about her father dying in some Afghan valley she'd never see. She thought about her grandfather, hands steady as stone, as he taught a 10-year-old girl to shoot straight and think straighter. She thought about Garrett Thorne, legend and skeptic, who'd just offered her something more valuable than approval, respect. And she thought about Natalie Caldwell, 26 years old, scared, and alone in a room with men who saw her as currency. Alessandra pulled the mission brief from her pocket, read it again, memorized every detail. Then she folded it carefully and walked out. She had 6 hours to prepare. She intended to use every second. The C-130 Hercules shuddered through turbulence at 25,000 feet, its belly full of warriors and the weight of mission. Alessandra sat in the jump seat, eyes closed, but not sleeping, running through calculations like a rosary prayer. Wind speed, temperature, holdover, lead time, reload speed, 8 targets, 90 seconds, 867 yards maximum distance. The math had to be perfect. Perfect left no room for doubt. Doubt got people killed. Across from her, Garrett Thorne checked his gear with the methodical precision of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. 40 years of muscle memory, still sharp as broken glass. His hands moved over equipment, rifle sidearm magazines, medical kit. Each touch, a confirmation of readiness. He caught her watching. Nervous, he asked. Focused. Good. Nervous gets you killed. Focused keeps you breathing. He secured his HK-416, then looked at her crossbow case. You really trust that thing in the field? More than most people trust their rifles. Most people haven't been shot at by people who shoot back. Alessandra opened her eyes fully. I have. Syria 2022. Compound raid, 12 hostiles, defensive position. Took out 4 sentries with the crossbow before we breached. 0 noise, 0 compromise. We extracted 3 hostages and walked out clean. Garrett's expression didn't change. 4 targets is different from 8. And Syria didn't have your grandfather's legacy on the line. The words hit precisely where he'd aimed them. Alessandra felt the weight settle across her shoulders. Expectations she'd been carrying since she was old enough to understand what it meant to be a Blackwood. My grandfather's legacy, she said quietly, is teaching me to shoot straight and think straighter. Tonight, I do both. Tonight, you do more than both. You do impossible. Garrett leaned forward, elbows on knees. 8 targets in 90 seconds isn't just hard. It's statistically improbable. Reload time, target acquisition, the human factor of adrenaline and stress, the math doesn't add up to success. Then I'll change the math. For a moment, something like approval flickered across Garrett's weathered face. Then the loadmaster's voice crackled through the interior. 5 minutes to drop zone. Check your gear. The team moved as one. Colton ran through comms checks. Wyatt verified his breaching charges. Declan powered up the tactical tablet, checking satellite feeds. And Alessandra opened her crossbow case, running through pre-jump inspection with ritualistic precision. The Raven R500E gleamed under the red jump lights. She checked the limbs, the string, the cam system. Loaded 8 bolts into her tactical quiver, each one tipped with its microcharge of C4. Each one a prayer wrapped in carbon fiber. Garrett watched her work. You made those yourself. Every single one. The explosive yield is 0.02 ounces of C4. Enough to disrupt the central nervous system and vital organs without external fragmentation. Clean kill, minimal sound signature. How minimal? 68 decibels at point of impact, at 800 yards. Alessandra sealed the case, like a door closing in another room. Jesus! Garrett shook his head. In my day, we just shot them and hoped nobody heard. In your day, they didn't have listening posts every 2 miles and satellite surveillance every 30 seconds. True enough. He stood testing his parachute harness. But in my day, we also didn't send women into combat zones and expect miracles. The words hung in the air like smoke. Around them, the team went silent. Colton looked up sharply. Wyatt stopped mid-motion. Even Declan's fingers paused over his keyboard. Alessandra stood slowly, meeting Garrett's eyes. Her voice when she spoke was cold enough to frost steel. Then it's a good thing I don't need miracles. I just need math training and men who don't assume I'll fail before I've even tried. Garrett held her gaze. The silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a real smile, not the half-sarcastic twist she'd seen before. There it is, he said. The fire. Good. You'll need it. He moved past her toward the ramp. And for the record, I don't assume you'll fail. I assume you'll succeed, because if you don't, people I respect are going to die, including you. The ramp began to lower. Cold air screamed into the cabin, carrying the taste of altitude and desert wind. 25,000 feet below Arizona stretched out like a dark ocean dotted with lights that marked civilization's fragile hold on wilderness. 30 seconds, the loadmaster shouted. The team lined up. Alessandra fourth in the stack, Garrett immediately behind her. She could feel his presence, solid, skeptical, surprisingly reassuring. One thing, he said, his voice barely audible over the wind. When you're on target, when your crosshairs are on a man's chest and you're about to take his life, remember it matters. Remember, he's someone's son, maybe someone's father. Remember and shoot anyway. She looked back at him. Is that what you do? Every single time. His eyes were ancient. It's the only way to stay human while doing inhuman things. 10 seconds. Colton moved to the edge of the ramp, silhouetted against the night sky. Then he jumped, dropping into darkness like a stone into water. Wyatt followed. Declan. Then, Alessandra stepped to the edge, felt the wind trying to rip her away, and jumped. For 3 heartbeats, she fell. Then her parachute deployed with a crack like thunder, and suddenly she was flying, gliding through thin air at 25,000 feet, the desert spreading beneath her like a map drawn in shadow and starlight. She checked her altimeter, adjusted her heading. Around her, 4 other parachutes tracked the same invisible line toward the same invisible target. 3 miles from the compound. That was the plan. Land ruck and set up overwatch, wait for the window. Simple. Nothing was ever simple. The ground rose up to meet her. Slow at first, then faster, then suddenly immediate. Alessandra pulled the toggles, flared the canopy, and touched down on sand and scrub with barely a sound. The parachute collapsed behind her like a dying ghost. She was down. She was in. She was committed. Now came the hard part. The team consolidated in a dry wash 200 meters from the landing zone. Colton did a head count by infrared strobe, 5 flashes, 5 operators, 0 compromise. Comms check, he whispered. One by one, they confirmed. Earpieces, active throat mics, functional encryption solid. Alessandra heard each voice like a heartbeat in her skull. Blade good, hammer good, ghost good, reaper good, ironside good. Colton consulted his GPS. 3.1 miles bearing 047 degrees. We've got 90 minutes to get in position. Move. They moved. Ruck marching at night through hostile territory was less about speed and more about silence. Each step calculated, each footfall soft, each breath controlled. The desert floor was treacherous. Loose rock, scattered cactus, ancient arroyos that could snap an ankle in the dark. Alessandra carried 48 pounds of gear, crossbow case ammunition, water, medical supplies, backup weapon. Her HK Mark 23 rode low on her thigh suppressor already attached. Insurance policy. She hoped she wouldn't need it. Hope wasn't a plan. She had plans for that too. Behind her, Garrett moved with surprising quiet for a man his age. The hitch in his left leg was more pronounced now, legacy of Panama 35 years ago. But he kept pace. Stubborn old bastard wouldn't slow down for anything, least of all pride. After 40 minutes, he stumbled, barely just a half step, a catch in his rhythm. He recovered instantly, but Alessandra had already noticed. She held up a fist. The team froze. What is it? Colton whispered. Equipment check. Alessandra tapped her water bladder. Hose is kinked. Need 30 seconds. It was a lie. Colton probably knew it, but he nodded, and the team took a knee, using the brake to adjust gear and check sectors. Alessandra moved back to Garrett. You good? Fine. Your leg is 40 years old and doesn't like 3-mile forced marches. It'll hold. His jaw was tight. Don't slow down on my account. Not slowing down, just making sure we all get there ready to fight. Garrett studied her face in the starlight. Something shifted in his expression, resistance giving way to grudging respect. You're tactical, he said finally. That's good. Most operators your age think tactics is just shooting faster. Most operators my age had instructors who taught them that speed beats precision. Speed gets you killed if you're imprecise. He adjusted his pack, testing the weight. But precision means nothing if you're too slow to take the shot. Then I'll be fast and precise. Now you're just showing off. Despite everything, the mission, the tension, the weight of expectation, Alessandra almost smiled. They moved on. At 90 minutes, they reached the overwatch position, a rocky outcrop that rose 18 feet above the desert floor, providing elevation advantage and natural concealment. Perfect sight lines to the compound 867 yards away, according to Alessandra's laser rangefinder. The compound itself looked almost peaceful in the darkness. Two main buildings, guard towers at the corners, scattered vehicles that suggested occupation. Lights burned in windows. Someone was awake, someone was watching. And on the rooftops, 4 figures moved with the regular rhythm of sentries doing their job. Alessandra unpacked the crossbow, assembling it with practiced efficiency. Garrett sat up beside her, with a borrowed HK-416, establishing a backup position in case the impossible became necessary. Wind, he asked. Alessandra wet her finger, held it up. Old school, just like Grandfather Hawk had taught her. The moisture evaporated faster on the left side. 3.8 miles per hour southwest, gusting to maybe 5. Garrett checked his own instruments. Confirmed, temperature is 56 degrees, humidity 14%, dropping as we get closer to 0200. She loaded the first bolt, feeling the familiar resistance of 500 pounds of draw weight. The scope showed her target in perfect detail, thermal overlay, courtesy of the Night Force optics, human shapes glowing against cooler background. 4 sentries initially, 2 on the main building, 2 on the north guard towers. The math played out in her head. 867 yards to the farthest target. Bolt drop at that range, approximately 24 inches. Wind drift 9 inches right. Coriolis effect, negligible but present. Temperature affecting bolt velocity by roughly 2%. Holdover 24 inches high, 9 inches left to compensate for wind. Reload time 3.4 seconds on average. But the real challenge would come at 0215 when the relief team of 4 additional sentries rotated up. 8 total targets, 90 seconds, 11 seconds per engagement including reload. The math was brutal, but math didn't account for adrenaline, for focus, for the way time slowed when you entered that space between heartbeats where the world reduced to crosshairs and breathing. She'd been there before. She'd go there again. Beside her, Garrett raised his rifle, scanning the compound through his own scope. His breathing was controlled, professional. 40 years of experience compressed into posture and presence. Count them off, he said quietly, so I know your targeting sequence. Alessandra traced the pattern with her eyes. Initial 4 targets. Target 1, north rooftop, left position. Target 2, north rooftop, right position. Target 3, northeast tower. Target 4, northwest tower. Then, at 0215, 4 relief sentries will rotate up to the southeast tower, southwest tower, and 2 to replace the main building positions. Why that sequence? Main building first. They have the best sight lines to our position. North tower's next. When relief arrives, I prioritize based on their setup positions and threat level. Garrett nodded slowly. Good tactical thinking, but you're making an assumption, which is that you can take the first 4 clean, then handle 4 more when they're already alert from hearing their buddies die. He glanced at her. The first 2 might be silent, but by target 3, They're going to sense something's wrong. Then I'll be faster. Faster isn't always, I know. Alessandra kept her eyes on the scope. But faster is what we have, unless you've got a better plan. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, no, this is the play. Just wanted to make sure you understood the stakes. I've understood the stakes since I was 10 years old. And my grandfather told me my father died for his country. Her voice was hard. I've been preparing for these stakes my entire life. Declan's voice crackled in her ear. Reaper Ghost. Radio intercept. Sentries are reporting in to base. Next check-in scheduled for 02:15 hours. That's also when the relief team rotates up. Alessandra checked her watch. 28 minutes. Copy, Colton said. All stations hold position. Reaper has the shot. Ironside is backup. Maintain radio silence unless compromise. The team settled into position, waiting. Alessandra had learned patience the hard way. Buds had taught her to embrace discomfort. SEAL training had taught her to exist in that space between action and stillness, where your mind stayed sharp and your body stayed ready. She used the time, studied the sentries' patterns, memorized their movements, calculated angles, wind shifts the way shadows fell across rooftops. Target 1 moved like he was bored. Target 2 smoked cigarettes. Target 3 kept checking his phone. Target 4 was the professional regular sector scans weapon always ready. Information was ammunition. She loaded up. At 02:10, Garrett shifted beside her. 5 minutes. I know. Heart rate, son, 62. Should be lower. It will be when I shoot. He glanced at her, surprised. You can control it that precisely. Biofeedback training. 8 months with a specialist in Virginia. I can drop my heart rate to 54, hold it there through the entire engagement. She chambered the first bolt. By target 8, I'll be at 51. Garrett shook his head slowly. You're not human. You're a machine. I'm both. The machine does the math. The human pulls the trigger. And the difference between those two, the human remembers it matters, his words thrown back at him. Garrett's expression flickered surprise approval. Something deeper. He nodded once, then returned to his scope. 2 minutes. Wind is holding steady at 4 miles per hour. Temperature dropped to 55. Your holdover should be 24 inches high, 8 inches left for the farthest targets. Alessandra breathed deep, feeling her heart rate begin its controlled descent. I've got it. You've got it, Garrett echoed. But his tone suggested he still wasn't sure. They'd find out soon enough. At 02:14 and 30 seconds, Declan's voice whispered through the radio. 30 seconds to check in and relief rotation. Alessandra's world narrowed. The scope, the target, the wind, the math. Target 1 stood on the north rooftop left position. Male approximately 30 years old, AK-47, slung across his back, smoking what looked like a cigarette. Range 867 yards. She placed the crosshair 24 inches above his head, adjusting for drop and wind. The night vision painted him in shades of green and gray. Human-shaped. Someone's son. Maybe someone's father. She remembered, and prepared to shoot anyway. 15 seconds, Declan said. Alessandra breathed in, held. Her heart rate dropped. 74, 68, 61, 58, 10 seconds. The world reduced to nothing but the crosshair and the target. Mathematics and mortality compressed into a single moment of absolute focus. 5 seconds, 56 beats per minute. The space between heartbeats stretched like eternity. Check-in complete. Relief team is moving to rooftops now. You're green. Window is open. Between heartbeats, Alessandra squeezed the trigger. The crossbow whispered. The bolt flew. 867 yards of empty air. 3.1 seconds of flight time. Gravity and wind and the rotation of the Earth itself trying to drag the bolt off course. Impact. Target 1 jerked once, as if startled by a sound only he could hear. Then he crumpled, chest caving inward from the internal explosion. No external flash. No sound louder than a door closing. He was dead before he hit the rooftop. Target 1 down, Garrett said, his voice absolutely calm. 87 seconds remaining. Alessandra was already reloading. 3.2 seconds. Bolt from quiver chamber, it bring the crossbow up, acquire target 2. Target 2 had turned toward target 1, confusion clear even at this distance. He was reaching for his radio. Priority threat. Alessandra adjusted her aim. Lead him 6 inches. Account for his movement. He was walking at approximately 2 miles per hour. Lateral motion left to right. Hold. Fire. 2.9 seconds of flight. The bolt caught him in the shoulder, spinning him. The explosion finished what momentum started. He went down hard. Target 2 down. 76 seconds. Reload. Chamber. Acquire. Target 3 on the northeast tower. He'd heard something. Not the shots impossible at this distance with this weapon, but the impacts. The strange sounds of men dying quietly. He was turning, scanning, bringing his rifle up. Alessandra fired before he could complete the turn. The bolt took him in the chest. Center mass. Textbook. He fell backward off the tower, dropping 12 feet to the ground below. The landing probably would have killed him if the explosion hadn't already. Target 3 down, 68 seconds. But now the pattern was breaking. Target 4 on the northwest tower had definitely heard something. He was moving to cover using the tower's structure to shield himself. Smart. Professional. Exactly what Garrett had warned her about. Alessandra waited. 4 seconds. 5. The target leaned out scanning with his rifle. There. A gap. 3 inches of exposure between the tower's support beam and his body position. She fired through the gap. The bolt hit his exposed shoulder. The explosion took him down, but he was screaming. She could see his mouth open, see his body thrashing. Target 4 down, but vocal, Garrett said. 58 seconds. 58 seconds for 4 more targets. And now the compound was waking up. Lights flicked on in the main building. Doors opened. But more critically, the relief team was deploying. Through her scope, Alessandra saw them 4 figures emerging from the main building, moving quickly toward the towers with the urgency of men who sensed something wrong. This was the moment. Success or failure balanced on a blade's edge. Alessandra's heart rate was 54. Her breathing was controlled. Her hands were steady as stone. Relief team deploying to positions, Garrett confirmed. Southeast tower, southwest tower, and 2 heading to main building roof. Target 5 was climbing the ladder to the southeast tower, moving vertical target, the hardest shot in the sequence. She led him upward, calculated his climb speed, adjusted for the changing angle as he ascended. Hold, fire. The bolt caught him mid-climb. The explosion and the fall worked together. He hit the ground and didn't move. Target 5 down, 47 seconds. Target 6 was already at the top of the southwest tower, scanning the desert with binoculars. If he spotted them, Alessandra didn't give him time. She fired immediately, a rushed shot with less than 2 seconds of aim time. The bolt flew true anyway. Impact at the base of his neck. He dropped. Target 6 down, 39 seconds. 2 targets left, both heading to the main building rooftop to replace targets 1 and 2. They were moving fast, aware that something terrible was happening, but not yet sure what. Alessandra tracked target 7 as he reached the rooftop. He was crouching, trying to stay low, weapon up. Smart, but not smart enough. She led his crouch by 8 inches, accounting for his forward motion. Fire, impact, clean kill. Target 7 down, 28 seconds. 1 target remaining. Target 8 had made it to the roof and was pressed flat against an AC unit, only his rifle barrel visible. He'd learned from watching the others die. 20 seconds, Garrett said. You can't get a clean shot. We abort, and Garrett fired his HK-416, not at target 8, but at the AC unit itself. Suppressed rounds sparked off metal. Target 8 flinched. Instinct. He shifted position to identify the threat. 2 inches of exposure. Shoulder and head partially visible. Alessandra fired at his projected center mass. The bolt flew true. Impact. Target 8 dropped. Target 8 down, Garrett said. 14 seconds remaining. But Alessandra barely heard him. Because as Target 8 fell, something changed in the compound below. More figures emerged from the main building. Not sentries. Not regular cartel fighters. These moved differently, faster, more professional weapons up and ready. And behind them, a 5th figure. Taller. Older. Moving with the confidence of someone who'd been in firefights before and expected to survive them. Through her scope, Alessandra saw his face clearly. Mateo Vega, El Cazador, the hunter, Garrett's former student, the man they'd come to capture or kill. He looked up toward the outcrop, as if he could feel their eyes on him, as if he knew exactly where they were. Then he smiled, and raised his radio to his lips. "Oh, hell," Declan said over the comms. "He's calling for backup. I've got radio traffic lighting up multiple vehicles inbound ETA 12 minutes. Colton's voice was sharp. "All stations collapse on the compound. Reaper Ironside move to secondary position and provide overwatch. We're going loud." Everything had just changed. The careful plan, the precise timing, the zero noise requirement, all of it gone in an instant. Alessandra grabbed her gear. Garrett was already moving his age forgotten in the urgency of combat. They scrambled down the outcrop toward a secondary position, closer to the compound. Behind them, the sound of the team advancing. Ahead, the compound exploding into activity. And somewhere in between, Natalie Caldwell and 2 Secret Service agents waited for rescue that was about to get very, very complicated. Alessandra ran through the desert night crossbow, in one hand, mathematics abandoned, nothing left but training and instinct and the certain knowledge that the next 30 minutes would determine whether people lived or died. No pressure. Just another night in the desert, playing God with carbon fiber and C4. She'd done harder. At least that's what she told herself as they moved toward the sound of men preparing for war. The secondary position was a shallow depression, 200 yards from the compound, barely enough cover to stop a determined bullet, but better than nothing. Alessandra and Garrett dropped into it as the first gunshots cracked across the desert. Colton's voice in her ear steady despite the chaos. "Hammer breached the south wall. Ghost killed their communications. Reaper Ironside, you've got overwatch. Anything that moves with a weapon, drop it." Through her scope, Alessandra watched the compound transform from sleeping fortress to hornet's nest. Men poured from the buildings, at least a dozen, all armed, all moving with purpose. Professional cartel fighters, not street thugs. Mateo Vega had trained them well. She found her next target, male mid-20s AK-47, moving toward a defensive position behind a parked truck. Range 418 yards. Easier than the sentries. Much easier. She fired. The bolt caught him center mass. The explosion dropped him instantly. His rifle clattered against the truck bed unfired. "Target down," Garrett confirmed beside her, already scanning for the next threat. 2 tangos moving to the west wall, your 9 o'clock. Alessandra pivoted. Found them. Both carrying RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades. Those could turn the assault into a massacre in seconds. She targeted the first one, range 390 yards. Wind had shifted now, coming from almost directly behind her. She adjusted. Fire. Impact. The man went down his RPG, tumbling from dead hands. The second fighter saw his partner fall, looked around wildly trying to find the shooter. He raised the RPG toward the general direction of the assault team. Alessandra didn't give him time to aim. Bolt loaded. Crosshair placed. Trigger squeezed. The explosive bolt hit him in the upper chest. He staggered backward, the RPG firing straight up into the night sky. The rocket screamed away from the Earth, detonating 300 feet above the compound in a burst of light that turned night to day for 3 seconds. In that flash of illumination, Alessandra saw everything. Wyatt Fletcher at the south wall, placing his breaching charge with mechanical precision. Declan Sterling crouched by a utility box, cutting communications lines. Colton Morrison moving like a ghost through shadows, his HK-416 up and ready. And in the main building's second-floor window, a face. Female, dark hair, eyes wide with fear and desperate hope. Natalie Caldwell, the senator's daughter, still alive, still waiting. Then the light died and darkness reclaimed the desert. Charges set, Wyatt reported. Breaching in 543. The explosion was controlled, but violent. The south wall blew inward, creating an entry point wide enough for 2 men abreast. Smoke and dust billowed out. Colton went through first. His rifle barked 3 times, suppressed but audible at this distance. 3 threats eliminated before Alessandra even saw them. Interior, secure south entrance. Moving to stairs. More gunfire. Not suppressed. The cartel fighters were returning fire, now trying to protect their investment. Trying to keep the hostages that meant money and leverage. Alessandra scanned the rooftops, looking for elevated threats. Found one, a fighter, positioning himself on the main building's roof with what looked like a PKM machine gun. That weapon could put out 800 rounds per minute. It would cut the assault team to pieces. Garrett rooftop threat, 12 o'clock PKM. I see him. Garrett's HK-416 spoke twice. Both shots missed. The target dropped flat at the last second, using the roof's lip as cover. Can't get the angle, Garrett growled. He's behind the parapet. I can get it. Alessandra shifted her position, angling up. The crossbow wasn't designed for high-angle shots, but physics was physics. 38 degrees of elevation. Range 290 yards. Wind now coming across at 6 miles per hour, complicated by the compound's buildings, creating turbulence. The fighter popped up, trying to bring the PKM to bear. Alessandra fired at his projected position, leading by 2 feet. The bolt arced high, dropped fast, and hit him just as he rose. The explosion sent him tumbling backward. The PKM clattered across the roof unfired. Threat eliminated. Jesus Christ, Garrett muttered. That was a 70-yard holdover. How did you? Math and practice. Lots of practice. Inside the compound, the firefight intensified. Through her scope, Alessandra saw muzzle flashes, saw shadows moving. Colton and Wyatt were inside now, clearing rooms with brutal efficiency. Declan had joined them, his rifle adding to the suppressive fire. But more cartel fighters were responding. The main building had turned into a fortress, with defenders at windows and doorways creating overlapping fields of fire that made advancement nearly impossible. We're pinned, Colton reported, breathing hard. Second floor is locked down. I count 4, maybe 5 hostiles between us and the hostages. We need suppression from Overwatch. Alessandra scanned the windows, found targets. 3 visible, 2 partially concealed. But here was the problem. Hostages were on the second floor, same floor as the defenders. Her explosive bolts were designed for precision, but explosions were unpredictable in confined spaces. Fragments could penetrate walls. Concussive force could carry. She could kill the defenders. She might also kill Natalie Caldwell. Garrett, I need to switch weapons. What? The explosive bolts are too dangerous in close quarters. I need the Mark 23. She was already moving, setting the crossbow aside, drawing her sidearm. The HK, Mark 23, was a beautiful weapon, 45. ACP, 12-round magazine suppressor integrated, designed for SEAL operations. Reliable as sunrise, but it had effective range of maybe 75 yards. She was 200 yards out. Garrett understood immediately. You can't make pistol shots at this range. Then I need to get closer. Reaper, that's suicide. You move from this position, you're exposed to every hostile in that compound. And if I stay here, Colton's team is pinned and the hostages die. She didn't wait for permission. Alessandra broke from cover, sprinting toward the compound in a low crouch. The desert floor was treacherous, all loose rock and hidden holes, but she'd trained for this. 500-yard runs in full kit, night vision, active live fire overhead. This was just another exercise, except the bullets were real, and dying was permanent. Gunfire erupted around her. Muzzle flashes from compound windows, tracking her movement. Rounds kicked up dust at her feet, whined past her head close enough to feel the displacement. 50 yards, 40, 30. A round caught her pack, spinning her sideways. She stumbled, caught herself, kept moving. 20 yards from the compound wall. She dove behind a shot-up pickup truck, breathing hard, adrenaline screaming through her veins. The Mark 23 was up, safety off, ready. "Reaper, you insane?" Garrett's voice in her ear, equal parts anger and respect. "Just tactical." She leaned around the truck, identifying targets. Window, second floor, northeast corner. Male fighter AK-47 firing at Colton's position. Range now 68 yards, within the Mark 23's capability. She aimed, compensating for the 45 ACP's trajectory. Squeezed. The suppressed shot was quiet, almost polite. The fighter's head snapped back. He disappeared from the window. "Target down. Northeast window clear." "Copy. Moving up." Colton's voice was tight. "Hammer frag that doorway." The explosion was immediate. Wyatt's flashbang grenade, designed to disorient rather than kill. The blast lit up the compound's interior, and through the windows, Alessandra saw shadows stumbling hands to faces. Colton went through the doorway, like vengeance incarnate. His rifle spoke in controlled bursts. Hostile down, hostile down. The ancient mathematics of close-quarters battle, solved with brass and lead. But more fighters were coming. Alessandra heard engines, vehicles approaching from the east. Declan's radio intercept had been accurate. Reinforcements. Maybe 8 minutes out now, maybe less. "Ghost, what's our status on those reinforcements?" "2 technicals inbound, possibly more behind them." Declan's voice was strained. "ETA 7 minutes, and they're bringing heavy weapons. I'm seeing thermal signatures that match 50 cal mounts. 50 caliber machine guns. Those would shred cover, cut through the walls, turn their defensive position into a kill zone. We need to extract before they arrive," Colton said. "Hammer Ghost with me. We're going for the hostages now." "Reaper, Ironside, hold the compound perimeter. Nothing gets in." "Copy." Alessandra moved from behind the truck, using shadows and building corners for concealment. The compound was chaos now. Smoke dust, the acrid smell of gunpowder, and fear. She found a position by the southwest corner, good sight lines to the eastern approach. The reinforcements would come from there, following the only road that led to this isolated compound. Garrett joined her 30 seconds later, moving surprisingly fast for a man his age. He took position beside her, his HK-416 covering a different sector. "That was the stupidest thing I've seen in 40 years, he said. "But it worked. Stupid things that work are still stupid." He glanced at her, and something in his eyes was different, softer. "But that was also the bravest thing I've seen in 40 years, so we're even." Before Alessandra could respond, gunfire erupted from inside the building. Not the controlled shots of the SEAL team, this was desperate, automatic fire. Someone was making a last stand. "Contact," Colton's voice. "Second floor, multiple hostiles. They've barricaded the hallway. We need—" The transmission cut off in a burst of static and gunfire. Alessandra's blood went cold. "Blade report. Colton, do you copy?" "Nothing." "Ghost Hammer, anyone respond?" Static. Then finally Declan's voice, quieter than before. "Reaper, we're pinned. Stairwell's a fatal funnel. 4 hostiles with good positions. Hammer's hit non-lethal, but he's down. Blade's trying to flank, but they've got overlapping fire. We can't advance. 4 hostiles. Second floor. Same floor as the hostages. And her team was pinned. Alessandra looked at the building, calculating. Second floor meant approximately 15 feet of elevation. Windows faced east and west. Fire escape on the western side, rusted, but possibly functional. She could get up there. Get behind the defenders. Create the angle Colton needed. But it meant leaving Garrett alone to hold the perimeter against incoming reinforcements. Don't even think about it, Garrett said, reading her intention like a book. You go in there alone, you die. I go in there with the team, we all die. Someone needs to break that stalemate. Then You can't climb. Your leg won't hold. The words were harsh but true. I can move fast. Get to that fire escape, come through a window. Create a crossfire. Garrett's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, this is the stupidest thing you've done tonight. And you've done several stupid things. I know. If you die, I'm going to be very disappointed. I'll try not to. Good. He checked his rifle, then met her eyes. When those reinforcements arrive, I'll hold them as long as I can. But Reaper, you've got maybe 4 minutes before this position becomes untenable. 4 minutes to break that stalemate, get the hostages, and extract. Understood. Understood. Alessandra moved before she could reconsider. Across open ground, knowing she was exposed, knowing any fighter in any window could end her with one lucky shot. She reached the western wall. The fire escape was there exactly as the satellite imagery had shown. Rusted ancient, probably hadn't been used in decades. She grabbed the lowest rung and pulled herself up. The metal groaned. Rust flaked away under her hands. But it held. Second rung, third, fourth. She climbed fast, the Mark 23 holstered, both hands needed for the ascent. Below her, Garrett's rifle barked twice, covering fire suppression, keeping hostile heads down. She reached the second-floor platform. A window was there, glass shattered by earlier gunfire. Through it, she could see into a darkened room. Storage, maybe. Empty. Alessandra went through the window glass, crunching under her boots. She was inside. The building's interior was a maze of corridors and rooms, lit by emergency lighting that cast everything in sickly yellow. Smoke hung in the air, thick enough to taste. And somewhere ahead, gunfire, the sound of men defending a position they had no intention of abandoning. She moved through the darkness, Mark 23. Up, every sense straining. The corridor opened to a central hallway. At the far end, she could see the stairwell. And there, barricaded behind overturned furniture and scattered equipment, 4 cartel fighters. Their weapons were trained down the stairs, waiting for Colton's team to try again. They didn't know she was behind them. Alessandra took a breath, steadied herself. 4 targets. 12 rounds in the magazine. 60 feet of hallway. Confined space, no cover once she committed. This wasn't sniping. This was execution. Close, personal. The kind of killing that happened close enough to see their eyes. She thought about her father. Thought about Garrett's words. Remember, it matters. Remember, there's someone's son. She remembered, and moved anyway. The first fighter never knew she was there. Alessandra's first shot took him in the back of the head. Brutal, efficient, necessary. The second fighter turned at the sound. She put 2 rounds in his chest before he could bring his weapon to bear. The third and fourth were faster. They spun, firing wildly, AK-47s on full automatic in a confined space. Rounds chewed through walls, shattered what remained of the windows. Alessandra dropped flat, letting the bullets pass overhead. Then she rose, advancing, firing. 1 round, 2, 3, 4. The third fighter went down. The fourth took a hit to the shoulder. Spun, kept fighting. She fired again. The Mark 23 emptied. The fighter fell. Silence, except for the ringing in her ears and the ragged sound of her own breathing. Clear, she said into her radio. Second floor barricade is clear. Blade, move up. Footsteps on the stairs. Colton appeared rifle ready, taking in the scene. 4 bodies. Alessandra, standing among them, reloading her sidearm with mechanical precision. How? He started. Fire escape. Western window. She slapped a fresh magazine home. Where are the hostages? Northeast room, last door on the right. He keyed his radio. Hammer Ghost collapse on second floor. We're going for the package. They moved together now, the team reforming. Wyatt limped, but was functional blood darkening his left sleeve. Declan was pale, but steady, his rifle never wavering. They reached the door, locked, heavy wood reinforced. Hammer, Colton said. Wyatt grinned despite everything. My pleasure. He placed a small, breaching charge, stepped back. Fire in the hole? The explosion was precise, surgical. The door blew inward. Colton went through first, rifle up. Federal agents, don't move. For a moment, nothing. Then a voice, female, breaking with relief and fear. Oh God. Oh, thank God. The room beyond was small, windowless. 3 people huddled against the far wall. Natalie Caldwell, dark hair matted with sweat, wrists raw from zip-tie restraints, but alive. Beside her, 2 others in tactical suits, bruised and exhausted. Agent Wallace McKenna and Agent Meredith Hartwell, the Secret Service agents, both alive. Declan moved forward with a knife cutting restraints. You're safe. We're getting you out. Natalie started crying. Not from fear, from the overwhelming cascade of relief that came when death stopped being imminent. They said they'd kill us. They said they were wrong, Colton said gently. Can you walk? She nodded. So did the agents, though. Wallace was favoring his left leg, and Meredith's face was a mass of bruises. Then we move. Now. They formed up Colton on Point Wyatt and Declan, flanking the hostages, Alessandra, bringing up the rear. Down the hallway, toward the stairs, moving fast, but controlled. They reached the ground floor. The compound's interior was a wreck. Bullet holes blast damaged bodies of cartel fighters who'd chosen the wrong profession on the wrong night. Outside, through the shattered windows, could see vehicle headlights, multiple vehicles moving fast. The reinforcements had arrived. We've got company. Garrett's voice crackled over the radio, strained now, urgent. 2 technicals, 50 cal mounts, approximately 20 fighters. They're deploying in a perimeter. Reaper, you need to extract now. Copy. Moving to south exit. Colton was already directing the team. Hammer, cover the door. Ghost, get the hostages behind that wall. Reaper with me. Alessandra followed Colton to the southern entrance. Through the smoke and dust, she could see the desert beyond. Freedom was 200 yards away. But between here and there, 2 pickup trucks mounted with 50 caliber machine guns were setting up a crossfire. And behind them, fighters were dismounting, spreading out, preparing to assault. We can't go through that, Declan said quietly. We don't have a choice. Colton checked his ammunition. 2 magazines left. Maybe 60 rounds. We suppress, they duck, we run. Simple. Simple gets us killed. So does staying here. Alessandra scanned the compound looking for options and found something. On the eastern side, a line of vehicles, the cartel's own trucks and SUVs, parked in a rough row. What about those vehicles? She said. Colton followed her gaze. They're probably locked. Even if we got one started, doesn't need to start, just needs to explode. Understanding dawned. Wyatt was already moving, pulling out his remaining demolition charges. I've got enough C4 left for 3 vehicles. Daisy chain them together, create a fuel-air explosion. That'll give us smoke confusion. Maybe take out one of those technicals. Do it, Colton ordered. Wyatt moved fast despite his wound. Alessandra covered him, watching the hostile perimeter through her sights. The fighters were organizing now, preparing to assault. They had numbers. They had heavy weapons. They had home field advantage. But they didn't have Wyatt Fletcher's expertise in making things explode. Charges set, Wyatt reported. 30-second delay. Everyone behind cover. When it blows, we move fast and we don't stop. Colton looked at each of them. If you fall, we carry you. If you can't be carried, we die trying. Clear. Clear. Wyatt triggered the detonator. 30 seconds. Time compressed. Alessandra checked her weapons. Mark 23 loaded 2 spare magazines. Crossbow slung across her back. No bolts remaining. Not much, but enough. It had to be enough. 20 seconds. Outside the cartel, fighters were advancing. Cautious, but determined. They thought they had the SEAL team trapped. They were about to learn otherwise. 10 seconds. Alessandra breathed deep, slow. Her heart rate was elevated 84 beats per minute, well above her operational baseline. But adrenaline was useful in small doses. It sharpened edges, made fast feel faster. 5 seconds. Here we go, Colton whispered. The vehicles exploded in sequence 1, 2, 3, each blast feeding the next, creating a cascading inferno that turned night to day. Fuel tanks ruptured, ammunition cooked off. The shockwave blew out what remained of the compound's windows and knocked fighters off their feet. Move, move, move. They ran, out the southern entrance into the chaos. Smoke everywhere, thick and black and choking. Alessandra kept one hand on Natalie's shoulder, guiding her through the darkness. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes in the smoke. But the cartel fighters were disoriented, firing blind, hitting nothing. The SEAL team was trained for this. They moved through chaos like fish through water. 50 yards from the compound. 75. 100. They reached the desert floor proper. Behind them, the compound burned. Ahead, darkness and distance and survival. Rally point 273 degrees, 500 meters. Colton said, checking his GPS. We link up with Ironside, then evac protocol. They moved in tactical formation weapons, out scanning for pursuit. But the cartel fighters were dealing with their own fires, their own casualties. They weren't organized enough yet for pursuit, yet. Alessandra found Garrett at the rally point prone behind a low-ridge rifle, still trained on the compound. He looked up as they approached, and relief crossed his face for just a moment before professional mask reasserted itself. Everyone mobile? He asked. Hammers hit non-critical. Hostages are ambulatory. We're good? Colton keyed his radio. Overwatch, this is Blade. Package secure requesting immediate extract current position. The response was immediate. Blade Overwatch. Helo inbound ETA 4 minutes. Pop smoke when you hear rotors. 4 minutes. 240 seconds between here and safety. Alessandra helped establish a defensive perimeter while Declan tended to Wyatt's wound. The bullet had passed through the muscle-missing bone and arteries, painful but survivable. Natalie Caldwell sat nearby, wrapped in someone's jacket, shaking. Not from cold, from the aftershocks of survival. Alessandra knelt beside her. You did good. I didn't do anything. You did everything. You stayed alive. That's the hardest part. Natalie looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. Who are you? Just someone who does the job. That's not an answer. Alessandra almost smiled. It's the only answer I have. The sound of rotors reached them before they saw the helicopter. An MH-60S Seahawk coming in low and fast, navigation lights off. The extraction bird. Declan popped smoke. Red. The prearranged signal. The Seahawk flared, kicking up a dust storm. Its crew chief was visible in the open door, manning an M240 machine gun, ready to provide covering fire if needed. Go, 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 Colton shouted. They loaded the hostages first, Natalie Wallace Meredith, then Wyatt, then Declan. Colton and Garrett covered the approach rifles ready. Alessandra was last. She climbed into the Seahawk, and hands pulled her aboard. The crew chief slapped the pilot on the shoulder. We're loaded, get us out of here. The helicopter lifted nose, tilting forward. Building speed. Below the compound, receded burning buildings, scattered vehicles, And somewhere in that chaos, men who'd learned tonight that kidnapping Americans had consequences. Alessandra found a seat, strapped in, and only then allowed herself to breathe. They'd done it, against odds, against time, against an enemy that knew the terrain and had the numbers. They'd done it. Garrett sat across from her, and he was smiling. Actually smiling. You know what you did tonight? The mission. More than that. He leaned forward. You did something I didn't think was possible. You made 8 kills with a crossbow in 81 seconds. You assaulted a fortified position alone. You broke a stalemate and saved the hostages, all while under fire from enemies who wanted you dead. Just following training? No. Garrett's smile faded into something more serious. Something like respect. Training gets you to competent. What you did tonight was beyond that. That was mastery. Beside them, Colton was already on the radio, reporting mission success. Around them, the team was settling into the familiar rhythm of post-mission decompression. Checking gear, checking each other, processing what they'd survived. But Alessandra couldn't settle, because something was nagging at her. Something wrong in the perfect pattern of their success. Garrett, she said quietly. El Cazador. His expression changed. What about him? We didn't find him. He called in reinforcements, but he wasn't with them when they arrived. He probably ran when he realized we were winning. Or he was never planning to fight. Alessandra turned to Declan. Ghost, when you intercepted those radio transmissions, did you get a location on El Cazador? Declan pulled up his tablet, scrolling through data. Multiple signals from the compound, but... He stopped, frowned. Wait, there was one signal that originated from outside the compound. Northeast, approximately 8 miles. Active during the entire operation. He was never there, Garrett said slowly. He was directing from a safe distance. Which means he's still out there. Alessandra looked at Colton. And he knows we're coming. Colton's face was grim. Problem for another day. Right now, we've got the hostages safe. That was the mission. The mission was hostages and El Cazador. Hostages were priority 1. We got them. Colton met her eyes. You can't win every objective, Reaper. Sometimes survival is victory enough. The words made sense, but Alessandra thought about Mateo Vega watching from 8 miles away, watching his compound burn, watching his men die, learning from his mistakes, planning his next move. Garrett seemed to read her thoughts. He'll be back, the old SEAL said quietly. Men like that always come back, but so will we. The Seahawk banked, turning toward the American border. Below, the desert stretched away in every direction, hiding its secrets in shadow and sand. Somewhere down there, El Cazador was planning, learning, adapting. But tonight wasn't his night. Tonight belonged to the team, to the mission, to the hostages who would see tomorrow, because a handful of operators had decided death wasn't an acceptable outcome. Alessandra closed her eyes, feeling the vibration of the helicopter, the weight of her gear, the exhaustion settling into her bones. She'd proven herself tonight. To Garrett, to the team, to herself. 8 sentries in 81 seconds. 4 defenders eliminated in close quarters. 3 hostages rescued. The math had worked. Training had held. The mission succeeded. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was just the beginning. That El Cazador's escape wasn't failure, it was setup. The first chapter in a longer story. But that was future Alessandra's problem. Present Alessandra just wanted to sleep for about a week. The Seahawk crossed the border 15 minutes later. American airspace, American soil. Safety. They landed at a secure facility outside Tucson. Medics were waiting along with FBI agents and military brass, and people whose titles Alessandra didn't know and didn't care about. Natalie Caldwell was taken for medical evaluation, still clutching the jacket someone had given her. Before she left, she turned back, found Alessandra in the crowd. "Thank you," she mouthed. Alessandra nodded once. No words needed. The debrief lasted 3 hours. Every detail documented every decision, questioned every bullet, accounted for. Standard procedure after hostage rescue, particularly when a senator's daughter was involved. Colton handled most of it, his after-action report concise and professional. When they asked about casualties, he reported Wyatt's gunshot wound and added that it was non-critical. When they asked about enemy casualties, he said approximately 18 confirmed kills, possibly more, in the compound fire. When they asked who made the long-range shots that eliminated the sentries, Colton gestured to Alessandra. Senior Chief Blackwood was primary sniper. 8 targets eliminated in 81 seconds ranges from 400 to 867 yards, zero compromise until mission parameters changed. The brass looked at her, then at the crossbow in her equipment case. "With that?" one asked. "With that," Colton confirmed. They asked her to explain. She walked them through it. The ballistics, the explosive bolts, the calculations. They listened like she was describing alien technology instead of basic physics applied creatively. When she finished, a 2-star general, who'd been silent throughout the debrief, leaned forward. "Senior Chief, how long have you been developing this capability?" 3 years, sir, since I completed SEAL qualification training." "And how many successful operational deployments?" "Tonight was the 4th. Previous operations in Syria, Somalia, and Iraq, all successful. Zero compromise in any engagement." The general exchanged glances with his colleagues. Then, to Alessandra's surprise, he smiled. "Naval Special Warfare Command has been looking for low-signature infiltration capabilities. You may have just given us exactly what we need." He stood. "Expect a call. We'll want to discuss expanding this program." After the debrief,